Morning, everybody. Trust everybody's had a good week, and if you're able to be here this morning, as I always say, it's been a good week for you. A lot of people trade places with us, folks. We've been studying in 2 Kings, ready for chapter 16. And as I've said several times, we're going through this pretty quick, and it's a lot of repetitive things, but about these kings and how evil they were, and how they lived their life. 2 Kings chapter 16. In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. 20 years old was Ahaz when he began to reign, and reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and did not that which was right in the sight of the Lord his God, like David his father. So Ahaz didn't do anything godly at all. He didn't live right at all. But he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, yea, and made his son to pass through the fire according to the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places and on the hills and under every green tree. Then Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to war. And they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. At that time, Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath to Syria, and drave the Jews from Elath, and the Syrians came to Elath and dwelt there unto this day. So Ahaz sent messengers to Jonathan. We looked this up last week. Tiglath-Pileser. Yeah, just the T guy here. King of Assyria, saying, I am thy servant and thy son. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Syria, and out of the hand of the king of Israel, which rise up against me. And Ahaz took the silver and the gold that was found in the house of the Lord, and in the treasures of the king's house, and sent it for a present to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria hearkened unto him, for the king of Assyria went up against Damascus, and took it, and carried the people of it captive to Kir, and slew Rezin. And King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet T-Man here. That's easier. Yeah. King of Assyria, and saw an altar that was at Damascus, and the king of Ahaz sent to Uriah the priest the fashion of the altar and the pattern of it, according to all the workmanship thereof. And Uriah the priest built an altar according to all that the king Ahaz had sent from Damascus. So Uriah the priest made it against King Ahaz, came from Damascus. So here this King Ahaz had seen an altar, had seen the altar, and he wanted one like it. So he had one constructed to look just like it. It wasn't a godly altar because he wasn't a godly man. And he was an evil man, just lived that way. We've all seen people that we think in our mind that, man, they're evil. They live evil, but we're judging them, David, so be careful. But you can tell people that live that evil life. That's all that's on their mind. That's all they ever do. They go from one thing to another constantly, thinking about what they can do next, what they can get next. And that's the way this Ahaz was. And when the king was come from Damascus, the king saw the altar, and the king approached to the altar and offered thereon. He burnt his burnt offerings and his meat offering, and poured his drink offering, and sprinkled the blood of his peace offerings upon the altar. And he brought also the brazen altar, which was before the Lord from the forefront of the house, from between the altar and the house of the Lord, and put it on the north side of the altar. And King Ahaz commanded Uriah the priest, saying, Upon the great altar burn the morning burnt offering, and the evening meat offering, and the king's burnt sacrifice, and his meat offering, with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, and their meat offering and their drink offerings, and sprinkle upon it all the blood of the burnt offering and all the blood of the sacrifice, and the brazen altar shall be for me to inquire by. Thus did Uriah the priest, according to all that King Ahaz commanded. This was all about Ahaz. We've all seen people like that today, that it's all about them. They don't think about anybody else. It's all for them and nothing else. And if we're not careful, we'll fit right in that rut. We'll get to thinking so much about me, that we forget everybody else. And it would be an easy rut to get into if you didn't serve the Lord. And that's the way Ahaz was. It was all about him and what he could do. 17, and King Ahaz cut off the borders of the bases, removed the laver from off them, took down the sieve from off the brazen oxen that were under it, put it upon a pavement of stones. And the covert for the sub-Sabbath that they had built in the house, and the king's entry without, turned he from the house of the Lord for the king of Assyria. Here this guy is, he was doing anything to destroy God's work. He was doing anything that he could to destroy God's people. He was tearing up things in the temple. He was destroying anything that might have a godly meaning to it. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaz, which he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of Kings of Judah? And Ahaz slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, and Hezekiah his son reigned in his stead. I know we've covered these chapters fast, but it's an ongoing theme. It's an ongoing thing here. They're evil. There's over 200 and some years of evil kings, a few good ones. And I got a new book for Christmas. My son-in-law and Jenny got me. And it just so happened to have in this, it's a book of charts and maps and stuff. And it just so happened to have in this book a list of all the kings during this time. Had the kings of Israel, a northern kingdom, and then the kings of Judah, which was the southern part. And I thought I'd give us a short recap this morning, because we read about these and we think, evil king, evil king, evil king. Oh, there's a good one. We go back to the evil again. But I wanted to read you some of these. And this book gives how long they reigned and how they died. And then it gives you reference over here to all these that you can find these. So it's not just somebody grasping and pulling them out of hot air. We'll start with Jeroboam. And then it has an evaluation for each one of these kings. Jeroboam, the evaluation was bad. It said he was struck down by God. Nadab was bad, killed by Baasha. Baasha, bad, died of natural causes. Elah, he was a bad one, killed by Zimri. This one page has 19 of these kings on it. And not a one of them does it list as good. This was the kings of Israel. They were all bad. They all died. One by suicide. They were a few, about half of them died of natural causes, but most of them was killed by their successor. There you go. There you go. That tells me they didn't like the way they were living either. Thought they could do better. But they couldn't do any better either. And then on the kings of Judah, the southern part of the kingdom, there were more good kings there than there was on the other side. But they were still, some of those, being killed by their successors. We'll just get a few of these. Rehoboam, his evaluation was bad, died of natural causes. Asa was a good king, had a severe foot disease. Ahaziah, bad. He was killed by Jehu. And Uzziah was a good king, died of a skin disease, which was probably the leprosy that he had. And Jotham, he was a good king, died of natural causes. But all the way down through here, I mean, there's 40-some kings. And it lists how many of them was good and how many was bad and their cause of death. There was more bad than there was good, folks. So why are we happy and content with the world in which we're living in, thinking it's good? We're filled with evil in our world. We are. And we have to trust God to take care of us. But I thought it was interesting that these kings, how many of them that were bad kings, they just and their successors thought they could do better, just like politics today. Just like politics today, people think they can be their successor and do a little better. Well, sometimes maybe, sometimes no. But this was God's chosen people that had to live like this and deal with this. So it'd be no different for us. We're going to have good times and we're going to have bad times. And we're going to have to live with those. We're going to have to move on to the next generation and hope for the best. But in 2 Kings here, we start into 17, and I know we go through this in a hurry. And if you go back to 2 Chronicles, you could get into more detail of these guys and how their life really was. Is basically bad. That's about all you can say. They were evil kings. And their deaths a lot of times was a gruesome death. But they, as my mama always told me, you get what you deserve, you know. So think about that, how you live your life. We're going to get what we deserve in the end, folks. Chapter 17. We'll read a little bit of this. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hosea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. It amazes me each time they talk about a new king, they talk about how he lived evil. When people talk about us when we're dead and gone, Gary, they're going to be able to say, he was a good Christian man. Or they're going to say, no, he was an evil person, you know. I hope each and every one of us, when we're gone, that our families can look back and say, that's a godly person. Yeah, Gary. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if you're not careful, the world, you'll do stuff, and the world will think of you more of that than your walk with Christ.
That's right.
And it convicted me.
You can have both. You can have both. You can have both. But the world tends to look at the worldly side, and they think more of that. But I'm like Gary. Hopefully, my Christian walk will outweigh that side, you know, that when our kids lay us down in that casket the last time, they can say, Dad was a good Christian man. Grandpa was a good Christian. But these kings here, every time we start a new chapter on a king, he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Wouldn't that be something that you'd want to be told about you. Something that you'd want told, that even your kids or your grandkids or years down the road that they'd look back and say, oh, Mike, he was an evil person. I hope and pray that that's not that way. You know, I'll try to live my life where people can see that I'm not that way. But this was a way of life then, folks. It wasn't just one or two hit and miss. It was generation after generation in these people. Verse 3, against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hosea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hosea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. And in the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria, placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan and the cities of Medes. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against the Lord their God. And they built them high places in all the cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced cities. And they set up them images and groves in every high hill and under every green tree. And there they burnt their incense in all the high places, and did the heathen whom the Lord carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. For they served the idols whereof the Lord had said unto them, ye shall not do this thing. We'll stop there. Here are the children of Israel. They had been told and they had been told how to live and what to do. And they'd done just basically the opposite of what God wanted them to do. And it made me think of the world in which we live today. God's told us what we need to do. God's told us, each and every one of us, He's left word for us in what we need to do. And what are we doing? What are we doing? Are we living the best we can? Or are we letting a little bit of that sin slip in? Do we try to have a little bit of God in our life and a little bit of sin in our life? It seems that that's kind of the way people feel good about themselves, is they live like the devil through the week. They go to church on Sunday morning and it's all okay. Let's do it again next week. That's not what God has planned for us. He wants us to be a godly person the whole week, not just on Sunday, but the whole week. And I see that through all of this, the one thing that stood out to me was the sin in Israel's life. As long as they was doing what God wanted them to do, things were good. But once they allowed sin in their life, things turned south. And it's the same way with us. Once we allow sin in our life, things will start going bad for us. Yes, we're going to have things that we're going to have to deal with in life. Just like Gary mentioned this morning, we're going to have that. And but with God, He gives us the grace to get through those things. But only with God do we have the grace to get through those things. We can't do that on our own at all. And a lot of times things come our way that God allows. He don't place it on us, but He allows those things to come our way. And as I've told Sister Bobby lots of times through the years, that they're tests for us. They're a test for us to see how we're going to react. I had a test in my life with the cancer to see how I was going to react to that. You all have had tests in your life. Things come up and it's just to show the world how you're going to react and how you're going to handle it. Are you going to live the way you've preached all these years, the way you've told everybody else to live? You know, people have problems, and we try to advise and tell them, well, you need to live this way, and God will take care of you. What happens when it comes back on us? Are we still going to be that way? Are we going to do what God wants us to do? Or are we going to just shy away and say, nah, I don't think this thing's working for me? Well, God help us if we ever think that way. Is there any prayer requests this morning before we dismiss? Sure. Amen. Amen. Let's pray for one another and pray for this COVID stuff that's ramping back up again with people. I don't care about your politics, folks, but let's be safe. Let's be safe. Take a little precaution from time to time, even though sometimes we think it's all political and sometimes, but people get sick is not from politicking. So, Sister Bobby. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think we all have unspoken requests. We all have family members that we know that need prayer in their lives. And pray for our church. Pray for those that are sick. We still have a lot of sickness going around, folks, and just pray for them. Pray for one another. I don't think we could make it through this world if we didn't have the prayers of one another. If we didn't pray for one another. You think, well, it really don't matter, but it does matter a lot. It does matter a lot. Any other requests this morning? Yes. Yes. Remember that family. Yes. As of last night, I don't think they had found him yet, so pray for him. Nita.